Most people think leadership is just one thing, but the reality is it's multifaceted and multi layers. Today, we're going to talk about the different layers of leadership and how to apply them in your practice so that you can step back from the tools and have an actual business that runs without you. Hey everyone, it's Jesse Green, your friend and colleague. You're listening to another episode of the Savvy Dentist podcast. So, the harsh reality is every question comes to you if every decision runs through you. You haven't built leadership, you've built dependency. So when it comes to leadership, there's really three layers: primary, secondary, and tertiary leadership. Primary leadership is how you lead yourself, the standards you hold yourselves to. Whereas secondary leadership is how well you lead others in your team and able to work through them to achieve your objectives. Tertiary leadership, though, is really where the rubber meets the road. If you want to create a real business that runs without you, it's all about developing other leaders so that they can be responsible for outcomes and meeting the objectives of the business. And that's where the magic occurs. Most people focus entirely on secondary leadership, ignoring primary and tertiary leadership, and that's where the problems begin. So let's talk about primary leadership for a moment, because ultimately the practice owner sets the standard for the rest of the team. How you show up, the enthusiasm you demonstrate, the standards you hold yourself to, or the actions you take on a day-to-day basis are really what sets the flavor for the rest of the team. If you are asking people to uphold a standard you're not willing to hold yourself, then clearly things aren't going to work out well. So it's very important that you are the standard bearer for the practice. And that means doing the right things, having the right behaviors, being the exemplar for the practice is where primary leadership really comes into play. As I said a moment ago, secondary leadership is where you lead other people and help them do the things in their role to a high standard so the objectives of the business are met. So, from a practice owner's point of view, that means that you want to be able to be very clear about what the expectations are for a particular role. You've got to be able to provide accurate job descriptions, scorecards, so that they know what's required of them in their role. But once you've done that, it's about guiding, training, coaching your team members to be the best that they can be. But even then, that's not enough. One thing to be able to guide and train and teach people, but you've got to also have the accountability structures in place. So, going back to the scorecards a moment ago, we need to measure how people are traveling against their scorecard. And the thing that I would say to you is this is where most people fall down. They set people up, they give them the guidance, they tell them what's expected of them, but they never check back in to make sure that the job is being done very well. A couple of weeks ago, I spoke to Michael Filosi on a podcast, and he said something that was really profound, and I hope you all took note of it. He said, "Your team are not paid to do the job, they're paid to do the job well. And the only way that you know they're doing the job well is by checking in and verifying what's going on a day to day basis." So, once again, secondary leadership is about setting expectations, training, guiding, coaching so they can develop the skills and the ability to fulfill those expectations. And then, thirdly, checking that those expectations are actually being met. When it comes to scaling your practice and being able to take a break from your business, the ability to have other leaders on your team is critical. And this is where tertiary leadership comes into play. Your ability to develop other leaders so that they can then lead others on the team is really fundamental skill for those that scale. Now, what that looks like in practice is allowing your tertiary leaders to be responsible for outcomes, to give them decision-making power, to give them some autonomy, and to be responsible for delivering on the objectives of the business. This requires trust, it requires training, it still requires verification and expectations as in secondary leadership, but it's about giving people the autonomy to make a decision and making them accountable and responsible for the result. Now, what this allows for you to do is if you get this right, it allows you to be one layer back. It means that you're not always the answer guy or the answer girl. It means that your team are sorting out problems before they ever get to you. And what typically happens when you get this right is your tertiary leaders will come to you and say, "We had this particular problem and this is how I fixed it." And you don't even need to think about it. You're just informed that it came up and it's now been solved. And that is where you start to get true business freedom. So let's think about this for a second. If we get primary, secondary, and tertiary leadership all working very well in our practice, one, we're setting high standards. Two, we have a team that knows what's required of them and goes about getting it done, and we feel confident and know that it's getting done. And then with the tertiary level of leadership, it now allows us to be one layer back so that we can focus on the things that only we can do as the business owner. And when you get all those three levels of leadership operating in harmony and in sync in your practice, what you have is a rapid growth scenario in your practice. You have leverage, you have growth, you have the ability to achieve your dreams and goals faster than you ever anticipated. And here's something for you to consider as we think about primary, secondary, and tertiary leadership. The number one responsibility of the CEO of any business is to make sure that they have the highest percentage of the right people in the right seat doing the right things consistently. You, as the CEO, that's your number one role. And understanding primary, secondary, and tertiary leadership is a key part to achieving that outcome. So let's think about how these things show up in real life. Recently, I was in a conversation with a practice owner who has a great team. The people on his team are good people. And he's put some time and effort into training them, and still things aren't working the way he wants them to work. So, what's the missing piece here? The missing piece is not the fact that he's got good people or not the fact that he's given them time and energy to train them. The missing piece is the accountability piece. What had happened is he assumed that the work was going on as planned. He assumed that people were doing the right things. And of course, no one goes to work wanting to do a bad job. But over time, gradually things had slipped and there was no accountability check ins. There was no verification that work was being done to a particular standard. So, all that we did with this particular fellow was we invited him to have a regular accountability meeting with each of the key leaders on his team to make sure that their scorecards were being executed as planned. And simply by going back and measuring whether people were hitting their mark meant that people started hitting their mark more often, because what gets measured gets managed. And so if that's you, if you've got good people and you find that you've trained them and things still aren't working well, go back and add the accountability piece in like we did for this client, because this is a really common scenario that we see in lots of different practices. Anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you found this episode really helpful, and I look forward to seeing you next time around.
Hey everyone, it's Jesse here. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. If you're looking for some more tools, some more insights, some more inspiration to help you create a practice that you love, as well as a life that you love, well, head across to savvydentist.com and check out all the goodies that we have there waiting for you right now.